Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar was born in 100 BC to a rich family. They were so rich that they got historians to prove that his great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was Aeneas. And so Aeneas was the only Trojan warrior who survived the siege of Troy between the Trojans and the Greeks and the giant Trojan horse. Anyway, Aeneas allegedly came over to Italy and founded the city of Rome. And so Julius Caesar was able to trace his lineage all the way back to Aeneas, and perhaps more importantly, according to Homer, the ancient Greek poet, Aeneas' mom was Aphrodite. So therefore, Julius Caesar had god blood in him. Just ask him; he'll tell you that. So where do we get the word Caesar? Well, there's different versions. Different historians tell us different versions. One would be perhaps somebody in Caesar's recent past, one of his great-great-grandfathers, was born through a cesarean section, maybe. Another option is that the word Caesar has roots, Latin roots that say that you had a nice head of hair. Another version of Caesar indicates that you had bright gray eyes. Another version of Caesar means that you killed an elephant during a war. Who knows? But regardless, there you get his name, Gaius Julius Caesar, and so we just say JC for short, right? Julius Caesar, when he was 16, his father died, and so Julius became the head of his family. When he was 17, there was a civil war going on in Rome, and through various machinations, Julius Caesar found himself appointed as one of the head priests of Jupiter in his area of Rome. So at 17 he was a priest of Jupiter, which was a big deal. Unfortunately for Julius Caesar, the wrong side of the Civil War won, and Sulla, who was the dictator of Rome, did not like Julius Caesar, and so he sent out an assassination squad. Julius fled, and to get out, he just left Rome to not be killed. His mommy and some other people begged the dictator Sulla to take the assassination squad away, and so Sulla finally agreed to do that. Well, Caesar decided that it still wasn't safe to be in Rome, so he decided to join the military. Now, the problem with joining the military is that you can't be a priest and a military person at the same time, because the rules were very specific that said if you were a priest, you were not allowed to, 1, touch a horse, 2, sleep outside of your own bed 3 nights in a row, 3, basically just leave Rome. You couldn't do any of that as a priest. So he had to make a choice, stay a priest or join the military. And he joined the military. And his first foray into the military, he did very well for himself. He advanced several levels up in the echelons. And then once he found out that the dictator Sulla steps down, which is kind of weird because, you know, in world history we think to ourselves that dictators just step down. Well, in Rome they do this all the time. So Sulla steps down as dictator, and Julius Caesar realizes that he's going to be safe. So he comes back. And so now he's been a priest and he's been in the military. So he shows up and he says, what am I going to do? What to do? Well, you know, I have a pretty good speaking voice. So he decides he's going to become a professional speaker. We call it an orator. And so he goes around and he speaks on all sorts of topics. He just gets up on the steps and he starts speaking. And people are amazed at how good he is at speaking. In fact, there are a lot of people who are like, I mean, if you have anybody that's going to speak for you, you get Caesar to do it, because wow, he's got a golden voice. This golden voice, Caesar decides he's going to go to the small island of Rhodes to improve upon his speaking skills, because there's some tutors down in the island that can improve his ability. So he gets on a ship and he goes to Rhodes, but on the way he gets captured by pirates. Julius Caesar captured by pirates. He doesn't do what a normal pirate captive does. Instead, I mean, he doesn't cower. He doesn't hide himself. He's not locked up in a cell. No, what he does is he gets up and he says, guys, while you've got me captive, I still need to practice my speaking. And so he gets up on the deck and he practices his speeches there in front of the pirates. He also plays the games with the pirates, and he enjoys physical exercise with the pirates. And at one point, one of the pirates said, I'm assuming the captain says, "Okay, Julius Caesar, we're about to send off this letter that says we're going to ransom you for 20 gold pieces." So 20 gold pieces. And Julius Caesar says, "Seriously? Seriously? 20 gold pieces? I'm worth at least 50 gold pieces. Please raise your ransom." And the pirate's like, "Oh, okay." So he raises it to 50 gold pieces. Well, the 50 gold pieces are paid, so Caesar's released. And as he's walking down the gangplank, he turns to the pirate captain and he says, "By the way, I'm coming back. I'm going to get a fleet together. I'm going to come back. I'm going to capture you, and then I'm going to kill you. I'm probably going to crucify you guys." And the pirates are like, "Okay, see you later." And Julius Caesar does that. Julius Caesar goes back to Rome. He gets a fleet of ships. He goes out and he captures the pirate ship, and he crucifies the pirates, just like he told them he would. For a couple of them, he felt really bad about it, so he slit their throats first. Good times. All right, so he was born in 100, and now we're going backwards. We're counting down to the year 1. So in the year 73, Caesar is given charge. He's appointed as a tribune. So a tribune is one of 6 people who are in charge of a legion. And a legion of Roman soldiers is about 4,500 guys. So he's been given a pretty good title there, pretty good responsibility. That's in the year 73. In the year 69, he runs for office of quaestor. So quaestor is a auditor, somebody who deals with the monies in the Roman Republic. So he's been a priest, he's been in the military, he's been a pirate captive, he's been a speaker, he's a tribune, and now he is an auditor. In the year 67, we're going backwards in time here, right? Or on the timeline, it seems like. In the year 67, when he's 33 years old, Julius Caesar happens to walk by the statue of Alexander the Great, and he looks up at Alexander, and of course Julius Caesar, who pays attention to his history teachers. Julius Caesar realizes that, gosh, he's now the same age as Alexander was when Alexander basically owned the world. And Julius Caesar says, "What have I done with my life? I'm 33 years old. What have I done with my life?" So he decides he's going to accelerate his game plan. So that was in the year 67. In the year 63, Julius Caesar runs for the office of Pontifex Maximus. Pontifex Maximus, which means the head priest of the Roman religion of the state. And he's going to win that. So that's in 63. In 62, he runs for the office of praetor. And so praetor is like one of the head judges. So he's adding to his resume, right? In 61, the Senate, so this is Republic, so there's a Senate. The Senate asked Julius Caesar to go to the Iberian Peninsula, so that's Spain, and handle that situation because they're causing problems. So Julius Caesar takes his legion and he goes over to Spain and he handles it very well. When he comes back in 1960, in the year 60, he comes back and he's given an option as he's coming back into the city. You see, the Senate was so impressed with him that they wanted to give him a triumph. A triumph means that they're going to have a parade in your honor. And so all the people will line up on the sides of the streets and they'll throw money at you. And Julius Caesar's, he has a huge ego, and he's like, "Wow, this is great. I really want a triumph. I want a parade in my name." Oh, but here's the problem. At the same time of the triumph, they're going to hold elections for consul. All right, so in the Roman Republic, you have the Senate, and then you have the 2 presidents. They're co-presidents. So there's 2 presidents at the same time. We call them consuls. And so the consuls, the co-consuls, right? So Julius Caesar wants to run for consul. Well, where the rule says you can't be a member of the military and run for consul at the same time, and because the election and the triumph are at the same time, he can't be honored as a soldier and run for consul at the same time. So he's got to make another decision. Do I get the parade? Do I run for office? And he chooses to run for office. And so he's elected consul. He's elected consul in 60. So there's two people elected. The other guy elected, his name is Marcus Bilius. And Marcus Bilius and Julius Caesar are not compatible. They don't like each other very much. Julius Caesar gets a couple of his friends. One by the name of Crassus and another by the name of Pompey. Those two are very rich and they're very powerful individuals. And so in reality what's going on is you have Marcus Bilius as one of the presidents, one of the co-consul, and then you have Julius Caesar and his two buddies. So there's 1 versus 3, and it very quickly became apparent that Marcus Bilius could not stand up to these three guys. In fact, at one point, Caesar sends in some people to physically remove Marcus Bilius's personal bodyguard, and Marcus Bilius decides that he's going to become co-consul just at the house. He's going to do everything online. You know what I'm saying. So the triumvirate, the three guys, the triumvirate, Pompey, Crassus, and Caesar are going to now run the show. Okay, so Julius Caesar decides, I can't stay still for very long, so I'm doing really well in military. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go conquer France. They called it Gaul back then, G-A-U-L. They're going to conquer Gaul. So he goes out to Gaul, and he conquers tribes out there. He goes into Germany, crosses the Rhine. He conquers some German tribes. He decides, you know what, I'm doing so well, and he crosses the English Channel and goes up into England. So he's the first Roman to do this, to go basically all over Western Europe and conquer all these people. In fact, the entire, if you talk about the entire period of all the Gallic Wars, so that's the war in Gaul and then all the others, the Gallic Wars, which, by the way, Julius Caesar is also a historian. He writes everything down. Julius Caesar, they estimate that in those wars that 1 million deaths, 1 million people were enslaved, 300 different tribes were conquered, and 800 different cities were destroyed by Julius Caesar. So he got himself a reputation. All right, meanwhile, back in Rome, the other two members of the triumvirate, let's see, Crassus is going to die in a battle, so he's out. Pompey is going to be elected as sole consul, so he's basically totally by himself in charge. When Caesar hears about this, he decides to come back. So Caesar's coming back with his army, and Pompey says, whoa, no, Caesar, I'd love to have you back. That's great because, you know, we're friends and you're a wonderful person, but please don't bring your army into the town, because we all know what happened to the last guy when you were in charge of the army. And Julius Caesar says, wait, you can't tell me what to do. I'm Julius Caesar. Pompey says, yes, I can tell you because I'm the consul. And Julius Caesar says, okay, here's how this is going to go. I'm coming in with my army. And the story says that the river Tiber, which is a river there next to Rome, that Julius Caesar took his army and crossed the river Tiber. And as he crossed it, he said, let the die be cast. Let the die be cast. Talking about dice, so a die is one of the two pair of dice. And so he's saying, God's going to decide what's going to happen. So as he crosses the river Tiber with his army, Pompey realizes this is not a good place to be. Pompey leaves, and he flees. Julius Caesar comes into the Senate. He says, all right, I'm back in charge, but I'm going to go kill Pompey. So I'm leaving my buddy, my good friend Mark Antony, goodness gracious, Mark Antony in charge of Rome. So Julius Caesar goes and he chases Pompey. He chases him to Spain. He chases him back to Italy. He chases him to Greece. He defeats Pompey's big army in Greece. So everything's going good. Everything's going great. Let's see. In the year, I've got my cheat notes up here. So that's the year 48 when he took out a lot of Pompey's army. Caesar comes back to Rome. He is pronounced dictator. He's appointed dictator by the Senate. So he's dictator for 11 days. On the 11th day, he gets himself re-elected as consul, and he says, I'm no longer the dictator, I'm just going to be the consul. Well, now that I'm the consul and I'm in charge of Rome, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go find Pompey specifically and kill him specifically. So he hears through his spies that Pompey has gone to Egypt. He flees, or so Julius Caesar goes to Egypt. Unfortunately, Pompey has already been assassinated, and when Julius Caesar gets there, the assassins present Julius Caesar with Pompey's head. Julius Caesar says, I wanted to do that, so he kills the assassins who assassinated Pompey. While he's there, he runs into Queen Cleopatra the Seventh, the famous Cleopatra. So Cleopatra's in the middle of the Civil War herself. She and Julius Caesar are going to team up, and they're going to defeat the other group there in Egypt. And in the year 46, in the year 47, Caesar proclaims Cleopatra as the Pharaoh of Egypt. Now, Caesar was married. In fact, he was married 3 times. His first wife, she died early. His second wife, she didn't support him in all of his conquests, so he divorced her. And his third wife, well, she's going to survive him. But there's a lot of historians believe that Julius Caesar and Cleopatra hooked up, and they may have had a kid together named him Caesarion. Okay. In the year, so that's 47. In the year 46, in the year 45, Julius Caesar gets himself re-elected as consul again and again. In fact, in the year 45, he's elected as the sole consul. So he is now, there's only one president, not 2, and he's in charge. In the same year, he's also appointed dictator for 10 years. So we have being the consul and then being dictator. And for 10 years. Okay. All right. So with great power, right? With great power comes great responsibility, but also comes great enemies. And Caesar is starting to really push on the senators. The senators are realizing that this guy, his ego is pretty big. And so they're starting to push back a little bit on him. Well, Caesar doesn't take that. And so if a senator votes no on something that Caesar wants, that senator is sometimes removed through either an election or removed through physically. And so Julius Caesar starts asking the Senate to do all sorts of crazy things, like all sorts of titles. He wants all these titles that he can put on his resume, like Father of the Fatherland and Imperator and things like that. Julius Caesar does have some laws that he passes that seem like a pretty good idea. I mean, he wants to push out a new census to count all of his people. He pushed out a policy that rewards people for having extra kids, because if you have extra kids, then you can grow the population of the republic. I didn't say empire, of the republic, so that they can go out and fight more wars. He also pushed out some legislation that he wanted to divide up certain lands for 15,000 of his veterans. So some good stuff going on. But interestingly enough, one of the things that Julius Caesar is probably the most famous for, at least what he gets the credit for, is the Julian calendar, right? So the calendar, Julius Caesar, before the Julian calendar, there was, the Romans used the moon as their calendar. Of course, so the moon is every 28 days, which doesn't really line up with what we know, as our calendar today. So Julius Caesar said, let's change this up. Let's base our calendar not on the moon, but on the sun. And so they did all the calculations, and they determined that a solar year was going to be 365 and a quarter days. And so that quarter adds up every 4 years, and you get the leap day. And so there you go, right? That was back in the 40s BC that they figured that stuff out. So we still use, obviously, parts of the Julian calendar today. All right. So the Senate, not very happy with Caesar, as they're becoming more and more aggressive against him. Julius Caesar says, well, I can fix y'all's wagon. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to start adding more senators. So instead of saying 100 or 200, now he's got 900. 800 of them are his personal friends. So whatever the vote is always going to be pro-Caesar. Now Caesar is going to pass some legislations that basically put a lot of checks and balances on the senators, but not on himself. He can do basically whatever he wants. So in February of 44, so this is his last year, in February of 44, Caesar comes up with this brilliant idea of getting himself appointed dictator for life. Dictator for life. Why? Well, he's got god blood in him, right? That makes him a god. Well, that gets you in trouble when you start announcing that you're a god. The senators decided they were done with him. Some of the senators decided they were done with him. On March 15th, 44 BC, a group of, and we have different historian opinions about this, but a group of about 60 senators form a plan to assassinate Caesar. Mark Antony, I'm thinking Marcus Aurelius, and he's a Caesar like 300 years from now. Mark Antony is going to find out about this assassination plan, this plot, and he's going to try to warn Caesar. But the assassins realize that this could happen. The assassins grab a couple of themselves, and they go and divert Mark Antony from getting to Caesar in time. The story says that Caesar was going to go to the Senate building. So he gets up on the steps. He's going in because he's going to make a speech. The story says that he was surrounded by some of the senators, and he had no idea what was coming. Senator Cimber, came up to him and said, "Hey, I want to talk to you basically about some taxes." When Caesar was like, "What? No, I don't know. Stop. I'm busy." Cimber allegedly, and again, from different historians' point of views, Cimber allegedly grabbed the toga that Caesar was wearing and shoved it down his arms, so, over his shoulders, so he couldn't move his arms very well. And Caesar's like, "What's going on?" And then Senator Casca pulls out a dagger, which was the sign for all the others to pull out their daggers. The stories say that Casca was the first one to strike. We do know that there were 23 stab wounds. 1 or 2 of them were fatal, all the others were not, which means, gosh, that must have hurt. As Caesar's lying there in the street, this is where William Shakespeare takes over. So if you've, in your 9th grade class, your 10th grade class, did you read William Shakespeare? William Shakespeare, his play, Julius Caesar, William Shakespeare says, here's what happened. And of course, he's making this up. He's a poet. He's a writer. He's doing this for his audience. Here's what happened. Julius Caesar laying there, and he's been stabbed all these times. And then Senator Brutus. Brutus is one of Caesar's personal close friends who, according to William Shakespeare, did not want the assassination to happen, but then understood why it needed to happen. So Brutus comes up to him and pulls out the dagger at the very last second. And Caesar looks up at him. Caesar lying there on the steps looks up at him and says, "Et tu, Brute," which in Latin means, "You too, Brutus? You're going to kill me?" And so the whole line is, "Et tu, Brute? Thus fall Caesar." I guess Brutus stabs him. But whether that actually happened or not, that's William Shakespeare's version. We do know that Julius Caesar died on the 15th of March, also known as the Ides of March. Ides means the 15th of a month. Not all the 15th on a month that works out, that only has 30 days. So not all the months have Ides. Okay, so Caesar's dead. There's going to be a civil war immediately between Mark Antony and his girlfriend Cleopatra. Between them and the adopted great-nephew of Julius Caesar, whose name is Octavius. They're going to have a civil war. Mark Antony and Cleopatra are going to flee. They're eventually going to not be in the picture anymore, and Octavius is going to take over. And then he's going to change his name to Augustus Caesar, and in the year 27 BC, Augustus Caesar begins the Roman Empire. So that's how that worked. Julius Caesar was not a Roman emperor. He was a priest, he was a military leader, he was, he was a tribune, he was a quaestor, he was a praetor, he was a consul, he was an orator, he was a dictator, but he was never emperor. So Emperor Julius Caesar, no, not so much. The emperor, the first emperor, was actually his great-grandnephew. His adopted grandnephew, Augustus, in the year 27. Okay, man, that was a lot. Good times. Be safe. Be good. Catch you on the flip side. Bye.